Yeah, and we're going to go on this 4-month-long trip where we're not getting paid
just to travel and
just
film.
to travel. And like that set us up great for LA.
We did it. Yeah. Like most things, you came up to us. You're like, I found this guy on Craigslist.
Yeah. So everybody thinks, I joined the union.
They think they send you emails with jobs.
They're going to start raining in.
Is that not how it is, Adam?
No, man, it is. Let me tell you from now, like the union has never given me a job. Movies where I had 600 background. I've had instances where we're filming with 300 background out in the sun in a wedding scene and people are in tuxedos and dresses and people are collapsing from like heat exhaustion.
You're awesome. Welcome to the Apex Studio Podcast. Today with us, we have Adam Garcia. Adam is a union AC and a non-union operator and DP. He's also a close friend of mine, and I'm very excited to introduce him today. Hi, Adam.
Hey, Dennis. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it is our pleasure. Tell us what got you interested into film. What sparked your passion and kind of got you going on that path?
There were two big contributing factors. One was my dad. One of the nicest things we had growing up was a video camera that he would allow me to play with quite a bit. And I think I was just like attracted to it because it was like the expensive thing in the house. He let me kind of use it and film like siblings recitals and things with it, so that kind of felt sacred because it was expensive, so it was like really cool when you got to use it. And then the other thing was I had a teacher in middle school and high school, and I was fortunate enough to take video classes at that time, and she was a big inspiration. Miss Theory, Michelle Theory, my teacher. And so out of high school I had 7-8 years of like classes, and so that definitely like got the ball rolling into college and after college.
Nice. How old were you when you first got to lay your hands on that sacred camera?
That must have been like 8 or 9 years old, something like that. So I would have been in elementary school, and like I said, I was filming things like holidays, family holidays, or like my sister's music recital or something like that.
Nice. Do you still have any of that footage?
I think I have some stuff from high school. I don't know about, my dad might have stuff dating back as far as middle school and elementary school, but I think I have some of the videos I did in high school.
Mm-hmm. When you decided to make that leap to actually pursue an education in college, what was the transition when you were getting towards the end of high school and you were thinking, okay, do I make this a career?
Yeah, back then, you got to remember this was 18 years ago or something like that. It wasn't very common for people to get into like photo or video. I think it was kind of like saying, I'm going to be an NFL star or an NBA player. Like people kind of like, okay, cool, but what are you actually going to do? I think nowadays it's a little more common because there's so much media being produced. Getting out of high school, I think my two big passions were auto mechanics and filmmaking, and my mom was like, no son of mine is going to be underneath an oily car all day. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm going into video. And my older brother had a interest in it, but he ended up not pursuing it and went into banking. And so I think my mom, she pushed me a little bit to kind of pursue it if that's what I wanted to do.
When you started going to college, were there things you expected or things that you didn't expect about what you were going to be learning there? What was your experience like?
I ended up taking a course for digital media for video and motion graphics rather than the filmmaking, because the college counselor, once again, back at that time, it wasn't normal. So my college counselor even told me, she's like, the chances of you making it in the film industry are very slim. So you're better off going in more of a marketing route. Mm-hmm. And so I took a digital media course, which kind of gave you the intro and mediary of everything, but you didn't really go too sharp into any one specific thing. So there was benefits and drawbacks. I wish I had taken the film class looking back, but once again, it was just, people were like, you're never going to make it in the film industry. It's like a shot in the dark, but it's one of those things, if you really want it and you stick with it, you'll get there.
Once you were done with that program, how did you end up in LA?
In college, you and I were working together under a media company that had opened Shortstop Studios, and we had some of our other classmates working together. We had started taking jobs doing weddings, which I kind of got into through my mom.
I remember all those weddings.
Yeah. So, it's a great way to start making an income right out the gate, and it's a good way to like finesse your skills and learn the equipment, and it pays well right out the gate. And my mom was at the time a wedding planner, so I was booking jobs through her, and then that kind of transitioned into when we moved to Orlando and did college in Orlando. Orlando. Transitioning though, we had been doing a different job where we were filming dance routines, and you had gotten that through the college, I believe.
Yeah.
And we started to
Shout
do,
out UEP.
yeah, Universal Event Photography. I think what happened was I did a gig in San Jose, California, and just that experience,
Yeah.
I was like, I want to move to California. And it was the weather and the feel and like just a different atmosphere. And I was San Jose, so it wasn't even LA. And I was pretty
Yeah.
much in a convention center filming for 16
Yeah.
hours a day, so I barely saw it. But I was
You
like,
still fell in love.
yeah, and I think we all kind of like talked about it for a few months, and we were all kind of back and forth. And after a few months of going back and forth on it, we kind of decided at that point we were going to move as a group from Orlando to Los Angeles.
What was the move like? That wasn't just packing a U-Haul and moving to LA.
Yeah.
It was one of your typical Adam,
Yeah, nothing's ordinary with me. It's always got to be extreme.
Yeah.
So
like most things you came up to, so you're like, I found this guy on Craigslist.
yeah. Yeah, so Craigslist was a big thing back then. You know, Facebook Marketplace wasn't available. And I was looking for work in California to help transition us, because at the time I think all of us were making our full income through freelance gigs and through the media company. And so I was looking for gigs on Craigslist out in Los Angeles so we could help transition financially. And I came across a Craigslist posting where a kid our age, you know, we were like 23 at the time, excuse me. We were around 23 at the time. He was our age. He had been working a full-time job for a few years, saved up some money, and just wanted to like break out of the cycle of that and start doing a trip cross country. And he wanted a media team to follow him and kind of create like a webisode series about it. We talked about it. He was based in Arizona.
Yeah.
And so he was living in San Diego, but his like life was in Arizona. And so we kind of like,
we Skyped a few times.
Yeah, we talked to him a bit. He was like, oh, can't really pay you anything, but like you could come on this amazing trip. And we were like, screw it, dude. We have
our parents told us, we had saved, like we sold all our furniture, everything we could. We saved some money.
Oh, it was bad too.
And everyone was like, don't do this.
Yeah.
You're going to waste all your money.
And I think I was kind of helping everybody. I was like, okay, so our goal savings is $3,000. So I think we each had $3,000 to our name. Like
barely scraped.
And we're going to go on this 4-month-long trip where we're not getting paid
just to travel and
just to travel. And like, that set us up great for LA.
We did it. Yeah.
And then, I think by the time we got to LA, we were like out of money.
And we didn't know where we were going to live.
Yeah. We planned for an apartment complex, and the apartments weren't ready when we got there, and they were like super small. I think Drew and I were going to room together. You were going to have your own room, but it was just like the cost to move in were expensive. And fortunately, a family friend of yours that we ended up crashing at his uninhabited home that had like no utilities ran to it. We were like sleeping in the dark, camping in this house basically.
Typical LA. You just start from zero.
Yeah.
So once you came out here, how did you establish yourself? What was the beginning like? Did you have moments where you were just like, this, I want to leave?
You know, there's a famous saying, you're not here until you've been here for 5 years. And it's a very true saying, because we had gotten the ball rolling and some momentum in Orlando, and that took 4 years to build while we were in college, 3 years. And so coming out to LA initially, it's starting all over again. There's no momentum. You don't know anybody. So it was like back to Craigslist, I think, at that point.
Yeah.
We were just taking like free little school film projects to meet people and to like try and get in rotation with people and build that momentum, and kind of started leading to some poorly paid gigs, which led to decent paid gigs. It takes time. I think everybody thinks like success is a straight line, and it's that famous photo where it's a scribbly line all over the place. And when you look back on it, it kind of straightens out in your mind. You see how it was kind of scribbly going upwards, but at the same time, it's like never a straight line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's something you would advise either a younger self of yours 10 years ago, so just someone that's considering going on this journey and taking a leap?
Something that I think is like a big misconception and like a cloud over people's heads is I was very concerned about the union. I thought working on union gigs is how you worked on the big films, and once you're in the union, like now you're like in it, you're on the big movies. And I remember even I had the opportunity to sit down with John Landau, who was the producer of Titanic and Avatar and all these. He's like James Cameron's producer. And I had a 45-minute meeting with him, and the whole time I was talking about the union. And looking back on that, I wish I didn't waste that time with those questions, because I was asking the wrong questions, but I didn't know better. So that's like a misconception. I thought a lot of it was to get into the union, and that's how you get it. And hindsight, that's not the case. So I think looking back on it, I would tell myself to not be so concerned about the union. And second of all, it's be patient and have some grit, because it's going to be tough for a while, and you have to stick it out. Like, be good with your money. You have to be good with your time. You have to like not be crazy with your expenses while you like build that momentum. And the other thing is just being patient. It really just takes time, and it takes meeting people, and it takes working on gigs, which lead you to meeting people, and it eventually snowballs, and you get bigger and bigger gigs, and your responsibilities grow, and then your education grows, and it's just patience, but also having grit and sticking with it.
Mm-hmm. I remember we were actually talking about, is it worth it to join the union? Does it mean you'll just get jobs? You've now been in it from 2018, I think you said.
Yeah, I joined the union. It was like June or July of 2018.
When you first started, what was the first union position? How did you get to where you're now?
So the union hierarchy, it starts, which this didn't become a position, I think, until the 90s or 2000s, but it's called a digital utility. And there's a camera utility and a digital utility, so there's a difference. The camera utility is like way higher on the ladder. The hierarchy in the union is digital utility, and then camera loader, second AC, first AC, camera operator, and then DP. And so that's kind of the totem pole. It used to be you started out as a camera loader, but they introduced the utility position. Like I said, I think it was in the 90s or 2000s. It could have been as far back as like the 80s, 84 maybe. But basically, I'm glad they added that position too, because you have a lot of responsibility as a loader, and that used to be the introductory position, and that's like crazy to me. But
be thrown in there.
Yeah, because as a loader, you're in charge of the media, which back in the day was film, and film is like even scarier. Like digital's a little bit less scary, but you're in charge of the media, you're in charge of the payroll for the whole camera department, you're in charge of the inventory, the camera gear, like if things get broken or lost, replacing it with the rental house, you're the liaison with the rental house. An introductory position, and now they've introduced the digital utility, which you start out basically, it's almost like a camera PA, but then your main responsibility as well is like wireless transmission on set. So you set up the video villages, and you set up like the Teradex or Paralinks or Hollyland or whatever brand wireless system they're running that day, and you make sure they have wireless image, and if for any reason you can't get a wireless image, you give them a hard line with like a BNC cable. And it's a much better way to get your feet wet, and it's basically how you get into the union now. You join as a utility, and you're like the video village guy, and you can make your mistakes, and you don't have as much responsibility. And then once you bump up to a loader, it definitely more than doubles in responsibility, but it's really good for moving up to the positions above that, because you kind of get hit with a bus of responsibility, and then you're kind of good after that.
Would you say the difficulty sometimes it comes both in the amount of responsibility and also learning to work with certain people, how they choose to work on set?
Going into the union world, like, on any set there could be a bit of hazing, and there's egos on set as well. The bigger sets you get on.
What's your advice? Don't have an ego?
I don't know, man. Like sometimes you gotta have thick skin, because the egos and the hazing exist, and that's on non-union and union.
Sometimes people are good enough to have those, maybe.
And that's the thing. Some of the greats have an ego, and they are like, you have to be thick-skinned to work with them, because they're a little hard to work with, but they're great. And then I know people that are like the nicest people I've ever worked with, and they're still great. One of my first union gigs was a show called Bloodline for Netflix in the Florida Keys, and I remember a first AD telling me on that set, like, good ADs are nice and great ADs are dicks. And I used to believe that because at that time on Bloodline, a lot of the ADs were kind of like crazy. I was like, yeah, you got to be a dick to be great. And then I did a show called This Is Us, which was filmed at Paramount Studios. And the first AD on that, he was like the sweetest guy you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
And he was an amazing AD. And so that kind of like shattered that thought process. You know, you can be nice and you can be efficient, but like you also have to be stern at times, because sometimes it's like, you know, a lot of money on the line and you got to get things done and tempers kind of grow, and it is what it is, you know.
At which point do you feel like, with which position did you start getting access to the creativity of what's being produced? Because I know you've done different positions.
Yeah.
So.
When you're working on like a big set where it's like 120 crew members on set and it's like a small village of people, it's easy to feel like a smaller piece in the chessboard, you know. You just kind of feel like a pawn, especially if you're like a utility. You're setting up the villages, and sometimes I've set up as many as 8 villages. So you got like hair and makeup village, producer village, director village, like special effects village, because all these teams need like monitors and to see their work and things like that. So it can be stressful in any regard, but it's honestly some of the smaller sets that I feel like you're a bigger cog in the wheel, you know. And like sometimes when you're on a crew of like 12 people, it's like every little thing you do is impacting in a very big way. So sometimes I feel like most rewarded on the smaller sets, but it's always amazing to see like what a village can do when you have 120 people all working together to make the same thing happen. So, you know, they both have their pros and cons.
You just came back from a show that I would probably say was like that smaller crew.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, so this one that I'm working on is like a limited docuseries. I think limited because I think they're only doing 1 season, but I could be wrong. It could get approved for more. But is guest starring Keanu Reeves. He's one of the hosts. And it's basically a show that's going to different companies that are innovating the industry that they're in, and kind of interviewing the CEOs of those companies to see what pushes them and what inspires them. And so that's really cool. And like, yeah, you know, we're anywhere from 10 to 20 people on set every day. And so I'm working as the first AC and media manager on that one. Yeah, basically, you know, I'm the guy that like preps all the cameras, preps all the lenses. Like sometimes I'm even prepping lighting and like grip gear, because that's just how it is. And like we did 4 countries in 3 weeks in Europe for the first like few episodes. So we did Slovenia, Croatia, Switzerland, Norway. Now we've done Arizona and Los Angeles. And yeah, it's like, you know, it's really rewarding because everything I do is like a huge impact every day. Like if I don't show up to work that day, like it's not going to get done. Whereas sometimes when you're like a utility, if you show up late to a set that day, like things are going to move without you. You know, you're going to get scolded for it, but things will move without you. Whereas on this one, it's like, bro, things don't move if I don't show up. So it's a good sense of self-gratification when you get everything done and people depend on you and things like that.
What would you say is the next step for you, and which one of the roles do you enjoy most?
I'm trying to climb the ladder in the union world. I started out as a utility. I did a few years as a utility, and now I'm classified as a loader and second AC. Basically, climbing the ladder in the union world, trying to make my way towards an operator or DP in the union world. But there's definitely a system to how you move up. It's not quite the same as the non-union world where anybody can do anything, and you know, it's just if you're given that opportunity. In the union world, there's like actual like training and like classes you have to do to be permitted, especially in California and New York. Those are the 2 hardest states to work in. And in the union, there's so much like training and safety regulation that you can't just like be an AC one day and then an operator the next day. It's like you have to be formally like brought into that position. But yeah, climbing the union ladder would be great. And then, you know, just working on the same thing, just bigger and better projects. I did a show in 2022. It was a 12 episode series. The budget was $100 million, and I was a camera loader on that. And now I'm on this docuseries, which I'm not really sure what the budget is on that, but I could tell you it's far away from 100 million. It's much smaller scale, but you know, it's so rewarding to work on that as well, because it's just it's a bigger bigger project. Rewarding wise with the travel and like getting to work with Keanu's cool. I mean, Vince Vaughn was on the other project I did, but like when I was growing up, The Matrix was like the big movie. And so
Keanu's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool one. So.
You said you do need a lot of requirements and certificates to move up. You're not just this position one day, another the next, except if someone's sick. Like you are able to sometimes get experiences because you've told me. Can you speak more to that?
Yeah, basically the way and I'll try and break it down because
how does it work, Adam?
Dude,
is it just about who you know? Is it about the skills?
There's so much misconception around the union, and I feel like information's a little hard to get. And the only time and even when I go to like people in the union that are representatives for it, they're like unsure and have to call people. It's like it's so shrouded in mystery sometimes, I feel like. But ultimately the way it works is so California is the toughest one. So I'll touch on California. I joined the union in Florida because it was easier to join in Florida than California. And then I switched over to California because it's one of the easier ways to get in. One of the hardest things with getting into the union in California is you have to work 30 union days to qualify to like join.
30 union days within a year, or how?
I believe it's 2 years. So you have to work 30 union days within 2 years or 100
Before being union, you have to work 30 union days?
Right. And then in the state of California, you cannot work a union position while not being a union member.
So it's like...
It's a catch-22.
Yeah.
So
it's like no one will hire you because you don't have experience.
Yeah.
But how do I get experience?
Exactly. So there's like two ways to join. Once, if you're like, let's say you are born and raised in the state of California, there's two ways to join. There's one, you can go to another state like Florida where you can join with no prerequisites. It's really just a matter of paying the paycheck. Then you're in the union. You can work 30 days in that state, and then you can qualify to come over to California.
Is that because that state is trying to bring more film people into it?
Yeah, like I guess in Florida's case, it's considered a right to work state. So it's a state law that you can work a union position being non-union. So it's just a state law. So that's what allowed me to go over there and kind of join. And for me over there, it was just the paycheck to join. It was an initiation fee of, I think it was like $5,500 to join as a utility. And it's up to $12,000 to join as a DP, and that's current rates. They keep going up. Yeah. And so like, you're talking $6 to $12,000 to join, and that's just your initiation fee. There's monthly costs, there's quarterly costs. They take 1% of your paycheck. So there's costs. And then the second way to join in the state of California is you can be on a show that's non-union that gets flipped to union. And then once it flips while you're already on it, if you earn your 30 days that way. But then a lot of people, like, the show will flip, but it's like not 30 days left or something like that. And so
does that happen frequently? Why would a show flip to union?
There's rules at what point a show should be union, and that's kind of based off of budget and also based off of Screen Actor Guild requirements. So like depending on the actors that are involved with it. So a union could force a show that's non-union to flip to union, and really shows save money if it's non-union. So because the rates are sometimes lower. Shows don't want to go union unless they have to. If they have big names attached, they usually know they have to. But if they can afford to not go union, they don't. But then they can be forced by, let's say, a camera union or a Screen Actors Guild to flip. And then at that point, you won't be kicked off the show because you're non-union, so you start earning your days. But I've only heard it happening in my group of friends like probably a handful of times, so it's pretty difficult. And then I'll just touch on moving up. When it comes to hierarchy, you start as a utility, and basically you have to do OSHA training in the state of California before you're allowed to work on a set. So once I gained my days in Florida, I still couldn't work in California. I had accrued over 30 days at this point, but then I had to come to California and do trainings because those OSHA trainings weren't required in Florida. Once again, it's easier in Florida. So then I had to do the OSHA training, and then once you have the OSHA training and the 30 days, you're now a utility. You don't take utility positions. You're in good standing with the union. All your dues are paid.
How do you actually find, because, okay, one day you're officially in the union.
Yeah.
How do you actually
So
get
everybody
the job?
thinks, oh, I joined the union.
They
The jobs
they
are just
think
going
they
to start.
send you emails
Yeah,
with jobs.
they're going to start raining
that
in.
not how it is,
No,
Adam?
man, it is. Let me tell you from now, like, the union has never given me a job. The union, I don't think, they provide a list of who's available, and people can, in the union, can reference that list. But everybody knows somebody, and nobody uses that list. I think I've been called off of that list one time for a Netflix Steadicam operator position, and I've never heard anything since. Everything is about who you know, just like in any freelance capacity, non-union, union, it's about who you know. So the biggest misconception with the union, and it's the biggest one I had, is that once you join, the phone will start ringing and these people will call you. That's not the case. The only thing you get from joining is being allowed to work on a union set. And so for me, what I would advise people is never worry about the union world unless you're being offered a position on a union set and you're non-union. And if that's the case, there's ways to get in. The minute you're offered a job on a union set, there's workarounds if someone's vouching for you. And that's really the only time that it's worth joining. So in my case, I got called to work on a project in Florida because I had PA'd on Bloodline for Netflix. And within 3 months of being a PA on that show, I started gaining union days. And the reason why is I was an emergency hire in the state of Florida because we were filming in the Florida Keys, and there's like distance laws. You have to hire someone locally, which is within 60 miles of the city you're filming in.
Oh, wow.
And no one was available in the Florida Keys, so they bumped me from a PA. I think I did some second AC days, I did some loader days, and I did some utility days. And once again, it's Florida, so there's not as many restrictions. I was able to work all those positions freely. Obviously, there was a little bit of hazing and like kind of know your place. You're a PA getting this opportunity, but like at the end of the day, it's I got to work those positions. But then I still had to PA for like two and a half years after that before I was able to like fully join the union, because it was still like I didn't have enough connections to keep getting those phone calls. Like I got those connections on that gig, and then I started working on other shows in Florida, but it was like in a, like camera PA or utility position. Like if I was lucky, a lot of times I was still PAing. I PA'd on shows like American Crime Story, the Gianni Versace season 2. I worked on Broad City, which is a Comedy Central show. I did a pilot for ABC called Las Reinas, but I don't think it ever went anywhere. And I worked as a PA on a Disney movie called The One and Only Ivan, which had like Bryan Cranston and a few other actors in it. And so, just because I started getting union days, I still didn't have enough connections to get the phone calls. And so like I went from working union days on my very first gig, and then all of a sudden back to being a PA. And then I would get little sprinkled camera days here and there. But then finally I got a staff position on a movie for Netflix called The Last Thing He Wanted. And it was Ben Affleck, Anne Hathaway, Willem Dafoe, a lot of big names. They were mainly filmed in Puerto Rico, but they came to Miami for 3 weeks. In 2 of those 3 weeks, I would make my initiation fee. So I was like...
Nice.
Yeah. And
that's when you knew you're ready to take that jump.
Yeah, it was 3 weeks of solid work. 2 of them would pay for my initiation fee. And everybody at that point was still advising me not to join the union because they're like, dude, you're not getting enough phone calls. Like, you're going to pay a lot of money and like not get any work. But I was determined, and I felt like I was starting to get enough phone calls. So I took the leap, and, I did that gig and a couple other, and then I think I went a whole year without working a union gig. So it's like, it can be tough. Like it's nothing's guaranteed.
Yeah. Were you worried during that year?
Yeah. And, I think my quarterly dues as a digital utility were $250, and my monthly dues were like $180. So it's just like, when you're not making any money, or you're making like low freelance money, like it adds up, it hurts. You're talking, a couple thousand a year. So.
Mm-hmm. So if your advice is it is important who you know, what's your advice on how to make sure you meet the right people and they recognize you?
Okay, so everybody has different philosophies on this, but my philosophy personally is if I work hard enough on set, I should make a lasting impression, and that should be enough for you to call me back. And if I didn't do that, then I didn't try hard enough. So my goal on every set is to be an outlier and work as hard as I can to impress who I'm working with, so that way when they go to restaff on the next project, like my name comes to mind. Another big thing is like keeping in touch with who you know and like shooting out texts. And it's a little tough because sometimes you're not like super friendly with them. You're just work acquaintances. So it just feels like you're badgering them for work. And like, I'm the worst at that. I hate like being like, hey, you know, like if you have anything available, or, you know, I got a free month or something. Like that's a big part of it, you know, refreshing people's memories. And one of the ways I like to kind of subliminally do that without directly doing it is just being active on social media. Even when I'm not working, I'm keeping myself busy on personal things and I'm posting about it so that I'm at the forefront of people's minds when they go to staff their next project.
Even though you take different positions, do you have any must-have items on you that you like always travel with or always have?
Yeah, so I actually brought some of my smaller AC stuff, so I'll just grab that.
Yeah,
real
go
quick.
grab that. Let's get into Adam's bag.
So it is like really important to have almost everything you could think of. Like when I go into like my larger kit, so I have a Cine bag, which it's like my Mary Poppins bag. I have everything from Advil to like rod attachments to cheese plates to like top handles for cameras, bolts, batteries, cables, like anything and everything I could possibly want. And that bag probably weighs about 80 pounds, but that usually just lives on the camera truck. Then there's also another bag, which this is really important to have, which is my clothing bag. And in that bag, I have divided bags, which is wet weather gear, cold weather gear, and warm weather gear. And so basically, no matter what kind of conditions I'm in, I have like accessories that can complement the different weather conditions. So in my rain bag, I might have a poncho, a rain jacket. I have like water wade shoes. In my warm weather bag, I have like the neck protectors, like maybe a face protector, like sunscreen, mesh shirts that are like breathe better. And then finally in like the cold weather one, I might have like mitts or like a beanie or something.
I imagine there's a story behind each type of climate where you have not brought those things.
Literally, I remember
you can't even hold the camera without gloves. That like
one of my first shows, Bloodline, there was a lot of hazing on that show. That was probably one of the worst hazing shows I've ever been on, but they were on like season 3, and like I feel like the more the seasons go on and the more people are like they've done seasons on this show.
They're closer.
And then they're closer, and then you're the new guy. But I remember the AD was especially bad. Me and him butt heads quite a bit, and now we're like good friends. But he had me stand outside and lock up a door of a stage while it was raining, and I had to just stand in the rain, and I had no rain gear. Like I was just in a t-shirt and like pants, and I was just standing in the rain for like, I think it was 8 hours. And like like eventually I think the wardrobe department felt bad for me and like gave me some dry clothes when I finally came inside and like locked up inside. But I think he did it on purpose to like teach me like you bring rain gear, you know, like, and that's just one of those like hazing situations. So now I never go anywhere without like a full rain kit, you know. Typically I like to be as minimal as possible on my body. When I first started, I had like this crazy chest rig with like everything, and I was carrying...
I remember you could turn around and I could grab a Sharpie.
Yeah, it was like a little over the top, and I think I still have it and I've still used it, but the only time I use it now is like if I'm in like the jungle filming.
Very remote.
Yeah, and I'm like far from the camera truck and I need everything on my body. But if I have access to the camera truck within like a short walk, or like I could put it on a camera cart or something, like
you don't need to look like SWAT.
No, dude, I'm trying to strip it down as like minimal as possible. I mean, this right here, this is literally like I could live all day pretty much with mostly just this. Of course, I'm going to need other tools and other things, but I could, reach in my Cine bag for it. I think some of the most important tools in my kit, and this is as a PA in the camera department for multiple positions, Sharpie and a pen. That is literally the most.
Someone always asks you for one on set.
As a PA, you're taking lunch orders, you're like writing notes down, you're making adjustments to call sheets, things like that. In a camera department, I'm constantly tagging media, I'm tagging cases, still writing orders, still getting coffees sometimes depending on my position. So like a pen and a Sharpie are crucial, and I like the Sharpie with the double end. So then you get the little writing, and then you get the thick end as well. So those are actually two of the most important things in my kit. The next most important thing in my kit are these Olfa scissors, which they're like $20 scissors. An AC who got me into the union got me these as a gift. These are really sharp and like industrial nice scissors, and just really important once again on set for like cutting tape, cutting labels, making quick adjustments to rain covers or like Velcro, anything like that. And then honestly, I never really use my multi-tool.
I think most people don't.
I never like, I have a thick flathead screwdriver.
That's what I was going to say. What do you tighten things with?
Right. So like, but and then the pliers are nice every once in a while, but I've actually recently just stripped the Leatherman from my personal kit. I have it here on this one because I'm currently working on a gig. And I try to usually run with the hip pouch only, like just this little like leather setup. But when I was doing this project in Europe, it was a little bit more run and gun. So I had to have like the chest rig, and it was Europe, so it was a little bit cooler. I don't usually like the chest rig because it makes your chest sweaty, but you can hold more. And I did like Below Deck one time, and I was a camera operator on Below Deck. And I was also doubling, like I was an operator / AC because I was like the third operator, so like a junior operator. So
is that because it's a boat, so you just need the most minimal?
Yeah, because the boat is like, airplanes are the same way, super tight quarters, and you can't really have things on your hips because they'll scrape the walls, and these are all like luxury boats and private planes and stuff. So a chest rig is really nice because it gets it off your hips and you're not scraping the walls. You can have it up close and like grab things that you need. Another really important thing to have in your kit is tape. I don't know whether gaff tape or paper tape. It kind of depends on the project. In this case, I'm working as a media manager on like a little indie flick right now. So I'm using paper tape to label all the media. And then it's really nice. I just got this.
Oh, yeah, that is nice.
I saw another.
I have one for my keys.
Oh, yeah, dude.
So I don't lose them or...
Yeah, I saw an AC have his little lens cleaner on a retractable, and I really like that, so I just added that to my kit.
Nice.
But this is a little bit more full kit. It's really similar to the hip one. It's just a little bit larger, so I have Sharpies, pens. Once again, this is just a lens cleaner that brush off the lens. And then this
is that a flathead?
That's my flathead right here. So this, another great tool you can find on Amazon. It's a Craftsman thick flathead. I'm not sure what they label it as. I think it's like $15-20 as well, but it's a nice thick head, and all day you're like tightening on plates, removing plates as an AC. So like,
do you prefer that over the shorter stubby one?
Yeah,
because you can grab that.
This one's like a good handle. Like, get a feel on that, and like you
that's
can really like torque things on, and then it just feels good in your hand. Like,
I mean, it looks like a defense device too.
So,
or if you need the chisel eyes for the talent.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So I have a few of those, and then the infamous Olfa scissors, and then a little LED light. And then other things I have a little dummy slate.
Nice.
Just in case like you're shooting like a plate shot real quick and you need it. I got some lens tissues. You got AA batteries, and these are always really important to have. Standard and metric set of Allens. And then the final thing that I like to have is there's this toolkit, which is kind of like an eyeglass screwdriver set where they're kind of smaller heads. It's not quite as big as the standard screwdriver set. It's more like micro screws and portable battery for your phone and a few charging cables, because not only do you need to charge your phone on set, but sometimes the people above you need to charge their phones. And
that's a good favor to make.
Yeah, if you got an operator and you're working as an AC and they need to charge their phone, and like you have the cable and the power to do it, then it's great.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's kind of like some of the things. Like, I think, once again, like the flathead's a really big deal. Scissors, Sharpie, pen, and some tape.
What do you find yourself using that smaller screwdriver?
I get a lot of small screws on like camera cages or rosette adapters, things like that. So then you'll need the like really tiny heads. And so like a lot of ACs will have the little eyeglass screwdriver kit, and in this case mine's a little bit larger than that, a little bit more robust than that, but it's essentially the same thing.
It's nice. It's motorized.
Yeah, and then I even have like a little knife here, and this is just for like
another
flathead stuff. And
nice.
This
and you gotta have the bottle opener, of course.
Yeah, you gotta have the bottle opener. When you wrap, you crack that cold beer, and
Would you be down to do walkie-talkie etiquette? Just
Sure.
like the basics of it?
Yeah. It's funny too because there's different etiquette in New York versus LA versus Miami, and so it's different who you go with. But essentially, good walkie etiquette is, so first of all, you have 16 channels, and typically on a very small set, everybody's going to be on channel 1. But when you get on a set of 120 people, you'll fill like 12 of those channels, and they'll deviate each department to a different channel. Typically in a union world, camera is channel 6. And production is channel 1. So by production, you're getting like director, ADs, PAs, hair and makeup, maybe like set decoration, things like that.
People you might need instantly on set.
Right, is channel 1. And like you can switch your channels. Like I'll go off of 6 when I'm in the camera department to go to 1 to get a PA and then go back to 6 and things like that. But knowing the channels when you first arrive on set is like a big thing. When you work on a smaller set, like I'm currently working on like a little student film, as a media manager, they probably have 12 people on set. Everybody's just on channel 1 because if you start deviating channels, no one's going to talk to each other. So that's a big thing. Know your channel, figure out what department you're in, figure out your channel, or just everybody's on channel 1. Then channel 2 is the infamous channel where you can take people to channel 2 for a private conversation. So if I would...
It's not private because
everybody switches to channel 2. So like, so yeah, it's, you know, it's funny too because I'd be like...
So you have to not sound angry when you ask someone to channel 2.
And people are... once again, if you're on a set of 120 people, probably 15 of them are going to switch to channel 2.
I'm sure people want to find out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm nosy. I'll switch to channel 2
Yeah.
if it's like something I might want to know about, like depending on who's asking. If it's like, you know, hair and makeup, go to channel 2. I'm like, that's irrelevant. But like maybe if they're calling my operator to channel 2, like, let me see why. Sometimes people will do channel 16, so that people are less likely because they got to swing the whole dial. And then other typical, so going into like what you say on the walkie. First of all, especially if you have a lot of people on set, you don't want to have unnecessary chatter on the radio, and like your ADs will chew you out for that. Like if it's not important, get off the channel. That's another thing. If you need to have a long conversation, take them to channel 2. Like you don't want the whole crew hearing about the food order and like he's missing his like salad, or you know, nobody cares about that. So be courteous, be direct, and then basically the way you address somebody on the radio is you would be like, Adam for Dennis. So I could come on and I'd be like, hey, this is Adam for Dennis. And then you'd be like, go for Dennis.
Do you say over at the end of it? Or no?
I never say over. I've never really like done the over thing.
But
most times.
Would I sound silly if I said over? Would people be laughing at me?
I don't know anybody that says over.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So basically it'd be like, it'd just be like Adam for Dennis. And then you'd be like, go for Dennis. And then I would be like, hey, Dennis, we need some paper towels on set. There was an accident. And you'd be like, copy that.
Who the hell do you think it?
Yeah. And you always want to copy because like...
Copy is an acknowledgement.
Exactly. It's confirming that you got what they said. And I'll even take it a step further when I was a PA or even as an AC. They'll be like, hey, Adam, can you bring some Kimtech wipes to set? And I'll be like, copy Kimtech wipes. Just so they know that I know.
You know exactly what they...
Exactly.
Really...
And like, especially if it's like a complicated thing. Like if they're like, hey, I need a like M3 screw that's like a RE M3 screw. And I'll be like, copy RE M3 screw. So that way it's like, okay, cool. Like we're on the same page. You know, reiterating what they need is a good thing. So that's like really important when it comes to etiquette. So basically you say who you are and who you're asking for. You wait for that person to reply. Once that person replies, you give them what you're asking for or the order or whatever the case may be. And then the person confirms that with a copy and you move on your day, and you're going to hear chatter all day in your ear. I sometimes hear voices in my head when I go to bed because you're on set for like 16 hours listening to voices in your ear. But aside from that, there's like hella walkie lingo that I could go over some of the random things.
Yeah, we'll go over some of like the funny ones or the common ones.
Yes. Common ones are like, if you're going 10-1, that means you're going to the bathroom. There's a joke that if you're going 10-2, you're dropping a deuce. But
do people actually say 10-2?
Just like in a joking matter, but like the proper thing is like, I think it's just a more like clean way of saying you're going to the bathroom. I'm going 10-1. 86 means like cancel that. Like, hey, 86 that food order. that means like, hey, and that's in the restaurant industry. They call the bathroom sometimes the honey wagon. I think that was a reference to like the old film age, where like basically the poo at the bottom of the trailer kind of looks like a honey, so it's the honey wagon. So, if they're like, hey, can you go get the AC out of the honey wagon or something like that?
It's like, we need it right now.
Yeah. First team is cast. So if your first team is coming to set, that means cast is coming to set.
Is cast the main talent, or it could be could it
really,
be extras too?
No, you would call extras or background, but if they're like a dialogue speaking like role character, you would call them first team or cast, but a lot of people say first team. Another one is, a lot of times they'll say like the coffee order is landing on set. Everything's landing on set. I'm not sure where that term came from, but like if you're like, hey Adam, and I'm like, go for Adam, and you're like, can you grab me a Sharpie? And I'm like, Sharpie, copy that, flying in. So I'll be flying in, and then when I'm there, I'll be like, hey, I landed with the Sharpie. I guess maybe it's talk from like airplane transmissions, because in a lot of cases, the older film industry used to be like war veterans and things like that. So I think some of the lingo comes from military style, and that's why like back in the day, the camera department was ran very militant, because some of the first films ever to come out were war documentaries. So you were getting like military veterans, and so like some of the hazing, some of the hierarchy, all of that is very militant, because 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, like there's a lot of war documentaries, and that's when the camera unions were coming into play. And like,
I remember when we were first considering getting into the union, there was this idea of, is everyone grandfathered in? Is it mostly older people? What would you say is your perspective now that you've been in it? Do you see more and more younger people?
I have. When I first started in the union in 2018, it felt like a lot of people were older. And this was a little like Netflix and everything existed, but like we hadn't quite fully transitioned to where streaming platforms were like in control. And I think as streaming platforms kind of took control of the market, you started to see an influx of younger and younger people getting moved into higher positions. But before the streaming networks and new media, they call it, it was very much so like all your operators were like 50 and older, your ACs were 30 and older, and then your loaders and utilities were like in their 20s. And now with like done A24 movies and like other indie kind of more productions, I mean, it's hard to call them indie nowadays, but in that case, the DP was like in its early 30s, and like ACs are in their 20s and stuff, and so it shifted the dynamic a little bit for sure. But initially it was a lot older guys, and they were like very hardened in their ways, and I think there was a little bit more hazing from the older generations. Now when everybody's the same age, there's not as much of an age gap. But I think on top of that, there is a big baby boomer generation in the film industry that's hitting that retirement age right now, and so like there's a large population of union people that are hitting that retirement age, and there's a new influx of young people coming in. But it's interesting because you get into the film industry to work with the greats, and by the time you make it, the greats are all gone, and then it's not what you wanted it to be anymore. Like the people I idolized when I was young, they're hitting that age where they're not working as much anymore, and like people that like are the hot thing now and the leading actors now, like I don't care for as much, because like I was in the industry when they were coming up, and so I don't idolize them the same. And so that's an interesting saying I heard from some movie, and it's so true, because the people I idolize working with, these are the final years and they're making their final films. I had the opportunity to work on Martin Scorsese's Irishman. That one I was still a PA at that time. I think I had transitioned into camera, but I took the PA position to work on it. But they came to Miami for like 4 days, and I worked on it to see like Martin Scorsese, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and then lo and behold, I flew all the way to Miami to like take this like PA gig for like 4 days, and none of them had come to Miami.
Oh.
It was all like stunt doubles and like stand-ins and stuff, because it was like flashback scenes, so they didn't show too much face. And Scorsese's getting a little bit older, but like somebody like Scorsese or like Leonardo DiCaprio, like I would be thrilled to work with somebody like that and be like, that's so cool. Or even working with Keanu Reeves, because I grew up on that, and I think you kind of like idolize those people when you're young, and then as you get older, you're like, we're all just people. Like I could work with somebody like Jennifer Lawrence, and I'm like, it's cool, but like
you're not starstruck.
Vince Vaughn, Bryan Cranston, Anne Hathaway was super sweet. She was nice to work with, and Ben Affleck's like tall as hell, and it's interesting to see people like up close and like what you imagine they look like versus what they look like. And then on top of that, the people I idolize are 10, 20 years older than when I saw them on screen. So seeing the aging difference, and most actors age very well, so good for them.
What are things that you look at and you're like, damn, I would love to do stuff like this?
A lot of people, when they first get in, they get in on like documentaries or docuseries and reality. By the time you get to work on movies and TV shows, it's a different caliber a little bit. It's rude to say, but like I hear people reference it all the time. It's like documentaries and reality are kind of like the minor leagues, and then like scripted movies and TV shows are like the major leagues. And it's like, yeah, once you make it to the major leagues, there's like so many people that influenced me growing up that I would have the pleasure of working with. But then there are newer movies and newer, like not even younger people, but people that are emerging on the scene now, but even in their older age that are like, making waves. And I'm like, oh, that'd be cool to like work with that person. I was growing up in my teen years, I was really into Judd Apatow movies, which were kind of like the stoner flicks, like Here's 40, Knocked Up, Superbad.
And what did you like about?
I think at the time I was just a young kid, and like it was so taboo to talk about like smoking weed in a movie, or like Dave Chappelle at the time had Half Baked. These were kind of like edgy movies at the time. Now I think it's not as edgy, it's just common, but at the time it was edgy, and so I was like, oh, that's cool, like they're making people uncomfortable in the industry with like putting smoking weed on camera or like drinking and partying on camera. And now there was always that like fantasizing of partying, but yeah. And then now as I get older, there's certain movies that are like definitely on my favorites, like not in any particular order, just how they're coming to my head. I've really enjoyed Babylon recently. Most people don't like it that I've talked to, which is mind-blowing to me because I love it. Everything Everywhere All at Once was amazing. I really enjoyed that movie. I really like American Hustle, The New Guys. These are all films that I find like, it's like Tarantino in a way. It's like the dialogue drives the film, not necessarily the action. And it's interesting how like if limited characters with limited locations just have a good conversation, it could be literally about the type of ice cream they like in a Tarantino film, that if it's done right, it can hold your attention. And I think when I was younger, when you're younger, I think you need all the toppings on the ice cream, and you forget that sometimes just vanilla ice cream is like really good, dude, and you don't need the sprinkles and the cherry and the hot fudge. So now it's, let's say something like Reservoir Dogs by Tarantino, which is a film where it's like, minimal cast in one location for the whole movie, and you see it time and time again. But like, I think that's really cool when anybody can hold your attention with such a limited amount of resources to hold it with, and sometimes writing is all they're holding your attention with, which is really cool.
What's next for Adam? You always have 10 different things going on, but what's next for you in terms of film, video, with regards to your career into that field?
I feel like I have a few lanes that I'm always kind of jumping between, trying to excel in the union world. I'm trying to bump up now and start earning more second AC days, and eventually operating would be great. I'm having the opportunity to operate now on documentaries and reality shows, like non-union things. So I operated on Below Deck. I operated on Grant Cardone's Real Estate King, which was like a reality show that I don't think has come out yet, but running around with Grant Cardone for a few months and filming that, and then operating on like music videos and like commercials and things like that. So with that, it's always, you're just hoping for bigger budgets, better clients, better coworkers, the ability to hire star players and like your friends, and working up on that. And then aside from that, I'm now getting into real estate a little bit on the side of filmmaking. So I love filmmaking, but I'm trying to also find another avenue. I struggled in 2023 like most people in the film industry, and
well, that's when we had all the
writer strikes and the actor strikes, and it showed me that having like all of your income come from like one industry is not always the best. So I'm trying to like deviate. I transitioned to taking on like monthly retainer clients for like social media content during 2023, and that's how I stayed gritty during like a time of less income. I think I made like less than 1/3 of my typical income that year, and on top of that, I had new girlfriend move in with me. I've gotten puppies since then. I had bought a house in 21, and so like to not do well in 23 was really difficult, but I think, being able to adapt, roll with the punches, and like I had a really good 5-year run in the union world, and then 2023 happened, and I had hedged myself by doing social media content for different influencers, and then and now since 2024 I've been able to get on the show with Keanu, and then this now like indie project I'm working on, which is like a vertical project. And so this year has been a lot busier for me, which is great. So I'm hoping it stays that way.
Do you see a trend of things looking more busy?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just to talk about an industry trend real quick, something that I'm noticing is a big shift is I think moving forward after 2023, the things that studios realized is that studios kept making money even though they weren't producing content. And part of that was because they had shelved a lot of stuff. They took off the shelf. They were able to run reruns. Like they had the means to survive a year without any new content. And by not spending any money and running reruns and unshelving things, they were able to make more money and spend none. Not none, but like they had overhead, but at the end of the day, it was a lot less money. And so I think the industry realized that maybe they're spending a little bit too much on certain projects, which could be a good thing and a bad thing. It means less budgets and smaller crews, but spending $400 million on like a Fast and the Furious movie is just like a little unnecessary. And so now, speaking of Fast and Furious, their next movie that they're coming out with, they said that they're going to reduce the budget to $200 million, and they're going to bring the story back to just race car drivers. It's not going to be about all the crazy stunts. And I think that's a shift that a lot of studios are making right now. I think they're like trying to pull in the reins on the budget spending a little bit and trying to produce better content and spend less money, which I think we need, but it's just going to affect the workers a little bit. And at the same time, I think there's a shift now with social media that a lot of people, when they're at home watching content, they're not fully watching the content anymore. I feel that scripted content is suffering a little bit right now because it needs your attention. And a majority of people that are turning on Netflix nowadays are scrolling on TikTok and just have Netflix running in the background. And if you have Netflix running in the background, maybe all you want to watch is Below Deck because it's like good background TV. And you can still TikTok scroll and then chime in for the drama every once in a while. But like if you're watching like a heavy drama, like it needs your full attention. And I think we're getting worse and worse about giving our full attention to things. And, everybody's different and the case is always different. But like when you're home, there might be that 1 hour right before bed where you could dedicate all your attention to like a good drama or something. But aside from that, like sometimes people are just eating and they want some background TV so I think there's going to be a shift of more money going into like reality and documentary, like what would be the non-union or like the minor leagues, where it's cheaper to produce and they can produce a bigger quantity of it. And at the end of the day, people are phone scrolling and watching the TV in the background. So they just need to generate the hours for people to watch, not necessarily make quality content. So I feel like there's this slight shift happening this year where a little bit more budget is going into like reality and docuseries content, and less money is going into like scripted and like narrative films and TV shows. So it's something to look out for, and I think it will affect work for everybody. And I think there might be a little bit less union work going forward the next few years, and then it's going to be interesting to see how like AI plays into like everybody's.
Do you currently have any AI tools you use? Have you experimented with it?
I've done some stuff in editing, generative backgrounds, and like doing little like effects where like you might swap out the dress the person is wearing or the clothing or outfit the person is wearing, and then like using AI to fix audio and little things like that. And then on a day-to-day basis, like ChatGPT more for like emails and like contracts and things like that. I haven't personally made a shift where AI is like a big part of my life, but I think it's also a little subliminal nowadays. There's so much that's you can't tell what's AI and what's like an algorithm. It's almost the same thing. So it's interesting because, I mean, technically you could say Siri is like AI in a way. So it's like, it's interesting. But yeah, I use ChatGPT a little bit, and then mainly in like post workflow, I'll like try some of the new tools that are becoming available. And those are all like really transformative. I mean, post production and then, the gear that's coming out today, like it's insane. Like you really can be a one-man band and like make some quality content, and it's a great opportunity for people that are young and people that are taking their first stabs at like doing things, you really can get a hold of gear for an affordable price that will make incredible content. And I felt like when we were younger, it was a little like part of the expertise was knowing all the gear because it was so confusing to make it all work together. And now everything's just it's kind of like the cell phone, it's all just like getting into one piece and it all works so well together that like you don't need to know as much and it still goes pretty well. So
yeah, the gear is getting better and better.
It's insane. I mean, literally you could record with like an internal mic on the camera and use Premiere AI audio to fix it, and it'll sound almost as good as like a boom or a lav. And it's crazy that technology is getting that way. It allows you to almost be lazier, but in a sense, the way I take it is not being lazier, but allowing you to concentrate more on the story or the content that you're working on. Because for 5 to 10 years there, it felt like I was so engulfed in like making the equipment work that the story came second. And now I'm getting to a point where like the equipment kind of does it all. Like, you have to monitor things and you don't have to set it up, but more than anything, it's just knowing what's new and what's coming out and like staying on top of what's coming out so that you know what tools are available for your use,
With regards to AI, if AI starts being used for movies and videos and it gets good enough, those people might get less work. Do you see camera operators and other people getting affected with like Sora and all that?
Yeah.
Because we have text to image now. Eventually we'll have text to video.
I mean, that was a big talking point of the negotiations with the Screen Actors Guild in their recent strike in 2023. And so it's one of those things, they came to an agreement and they made it work. But at the end of the day, it's like, technology is going to run its course and it's going to do what it's going to do. And I think ultimately, like, one of the big issues that they were having is that they were scanning people and implementing those people as background so that they didn't have to hire hordes of people for background. And at the end of the day, I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, we were already doing that since like the early 2000s. There could be something like Queen movie, Bohemian Rhapsody with Rami Malek, like, the big scene at the end where they're playing in the arena and there's all those people and there's this really cool shot where it swoops over the arena. They only had about 100, 200 people there, but the arena was full of like tens of thousands of people. But all they did was copy and paste the 100 or 200 people they had in post and filled the arena. And I
mean, they've done that in like
saving
we're
talking early 2000s. This has been going on.
Yeah,
so like it wasn't AI generated, it was algorithm generated. It's hard to kind of put a definition on that, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing. So it's just becoming more accessible, and I think there's not a lot you can do to stop it. You can keep pushing it down the road as much as you can, but it's gonna affect people's incomes and lives and work, and at the end of the day, I think it makes sense. Like, I was a background PA for a year, and movies where I had 600 background, and me and one other person were hoarding 600 background. They're all getting paid anywhere from like 100 to 300 a day. So you got to pay all those people. All those people got to have outfits. You got to feed them. They all got to use the bathroom. Like, I've had instances where we're filming with 300 background out in the sun in a wedding scene, and people are in tuxedos and dresses, and people are collapsing from like heat exhaustion. All that can be avoided with just generating background. And it's to an extent. You can't do close-ups on people with AI just yet. It's the wider shots, but I think it's one of those things you can't stop. And then even with as far as camera operating and things like that, it will, to some extent. I saw there was a AI generated Pepsi commercial, and the whole thing was AI generated. And I think this was on like the local 600 union Facebook page, and all these like union operators and like union camera people were bashing it because the hands looked all messed up and the faces didn't look too bad, but like they'd have little bits of distortion. But to me, it kind of looked like a Van Gogh painting, and it looked artistic, and I actually really liked it. And the whole scene was like a Gatsby kind of party, and they're serving like Pepsi or Coke or something at this party, and the whole thing's AI generated. And to me, it was very artsy, and I'm like, this could go on TV and it would do the same job. And now everybody's been replaced. The whole thing was AI generated. The sounds, the visuals, like, we'll get to that point where like that is a style and things. But I think as of right now, based off of the technology we have, like humans will still have all the originality and the pure substance that holds our attention when talented people work together. But some of that filler TV, your, 90 Day Fiance, Below Deck, dating show, reality shows, like some of that could start to get replaced with AI generated content, like, because at the end of the day, it might just be the TV in the background while you eat a meal, or the TV in the background while you're TikTok scrolling, and you're not so caught up in like the content. You just want to have some noise in the background.
Okay, so in actual closing, what would be your advice for someone who lives today that's starting to see this technology come out and they're on like a path like yours?
The biggest thing I would say is, like, if you're getting into the industry and like you want to do something like camera operating or directing or like wardrobe and costumes, I think when I got started, it was a little more common to like start at the bottom and work your way up. And now in the past 10 to 15 years, it's transitioned that social media and the internet have allowed for people that are talented in what they do to go from nothing to something very quickly. And now I find that it's less and less in the industry that you work your way up to something. You don't start as a utility and work your way to a DP. You basically just become a DP out of college. And yeah, you're filming a $300 music video for your friend, or a $3,000 music video for your friend, or a $30,000 music video for your friend. But at the end of the day, like, just do what you want to do, because now once you become good enough at it, you can be found through the internet or social media, or you could put yourself in front of the right people, and you have a portfolio of work that if you shot that $300 music video for your friend, but it looks like a $30,000 music video, you can go and somehow through social media be like, hey, Snoop Dogg, like, let me shoot you this $30,000, $60,000 music video. Look at what I did. Don't tell him you did it for $300. And if you have good enough work, he might respond. And, some of these CEOs we're filming with on this show, like the one of the guys we were interviewing is Tim Ellis, and he is the CEO of a 3D printing rocket company. And he got his first seed money by like cold emailing Mark Cuban and just sending him his ideas. And Mark Cuban actually liked it and ended up sending him his first like 500 grand. Like, that's the internet. So now he was like an intern for SpaceX and then for Blue Origin. And then he went from an intern and now he's a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar 3D rocket printing company. Like, it's the same thing in the film industry. It's like I've literally watched people that are making YouTube videos become like a DP on a union movie overnight because you have the talent. So now with the internet, I think you can be found. Whereas when I was a little bit younger and before my time, I think there was a little bit more control over the pipeline of who came up in the industry. And now there's like, it's a free for all. So like, just show what you got and like, shoot your shot and hope for the best.
Nice. Yeah. Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, man.
For joining us today. And yeah, do you have anything you want to say in closing?
Yeah, no, I mean, just enjoy what you do and go shoot some shit, and like, don't get so caught up sometimes in all the like little loopholes and legalities and budgets, and just go have fun. And like, I'm starting to realize like just patience, man. Like, it all comes in time, and like if you do what you enjoy doing and you're good at it and you do it every day, like, you're gonna excel. And that's in any industry. So, just stick with it, and there'll be up times and there'll be down times, and enjoy it all for what it's worth.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Adam.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for tuning in for today. Please feel free to let us know what you think about this episode, comment, share, and until next time.